The power of not taking things personally isn't about ignoring what happens around you. It isn't about pretending the world doesn't matter. It's about choosing what you allow to touch your heart. Every insult, every criticism, every dismissive glance has a way of pulling us in, making us replay words, analyze intentions, and question our worth. Most of the pain we feel in life comes not from what others do, but from how deeply we internalize it. Emotionally resilient people don't live without conflict or critique. They feel the moment, they acknowledge it, and then they step back. They pause before reacting. They notice the emotion rising in their chest. They recognize that the other person's words often reflect their own mindset, struggles, or misunderstandings, not the value of the listener. Not taking things personally is a skill. It's a form of freedom. It allows you to stay grounded when life gets messy, to respond with clarity instead of reacting with pain, to protect your peace without shutting yourself off. This audiobook is for anyone who wants to experience life without handing over their emotional control to others. If you've ever felt drained by words or actions that weren't truly yours, like this video, subscribe for deeper emotional clarity and share it with someone who takes life too personally. Your worth is not in someone else's opinion. Your calm is not in someone else's hands. Learning not to take things personally is learning to live freely, and that power is yours to claim. Chapter 1. The invisible weight you've been carrying. You've been carrying a weight you didn't even agree to pick up. It shows up in your chest when someone's tone feels sharp. It tightens your throat when a message goes unanswered. It whispers stories into your mind when you walk into a room and someone doesn't smile back. It follows you home after an awkward conversation, and it sits beside you in bed, replaying one sentence like it's a verdict. You tell yourself you're fine. You tell yourself you're just being careful, just paying attention, just trying to understand people. But deep down, you know the truth. You've been living like everything is about you. Every glance, every delay, every criticism, every rejection, every joke that didn't land right. And the cost is massive, not because you're weak, not because you're broken, but because you're human. Humans are wired to belong. Your brain is designed to scan for danger in relationships because once upon a time being rejected didn't just hurt your feelings, it threatened your survival. Your nervous system doesn't always know the difference between a lion in the grass and a coworker who didn't say good morning. So you react, you shrink, you defend, you overthink, you try to control how people see you, you try to manage the room, you try to guess what everyone meant. You become a prisoner of interpretation. But here's the shift that changes everything. It's simple, and it's ruthless in how freeing it is. Most of what people do has little to do with you. Say it again in your mind, not like a comforting quote, but like a disciplined truth you're going to build your life on. Most of what people do has little to do with you. When you truly understand this, you stop bleeding energy into situations that don't deserve it. You stop volunteering your peace to every mood in the room. You stop letting someone else's internal chaos become your personal crisis. Not taking things personally isn't a cute mindset. It's a power. It's emotional mastery. It's self-respect in action. It's how you stay steady in a world full of people who are unsteady. Let me take you into a story. There was a man named Daniel who was brilliant at his job. Not the loud kind of brilliant, the quiet kind. He did the work. He fixed problems. He made things run smoother. But he had one weakness. He needed people to be pleased with him. If his boss replied with a short email, Daniel assumed he was in trouble. If his coworker gave feedback, Daniel heard condemnation. If someone didn't laugh at his joke, Daniel felt rejected. Daniel lived inside other people's reactions. One day he presented an idea he had spent weeks building. He was proud of it. It was solid. He walked into the meeting with confidence, and then it happened. His boss cut him off mid-sentence and said, "This isn't ready, we can't use this." Daniel froze. His face stayed calm, but inside he was on fire. The room blurred, his thoughts raced. He sat down feeling like he'd been humiliated in front of everyone. For days he couldn't stop replaying it. He drafted resignation letters in his head. He imagined being fired. He imagined his coworkers talking about him. He took it personally, and it poisoned his week. Then something unexpected happened. A colleague pulled him aside and said, "Don't let it get to you. He does that to everyone." Daniel laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. He said, "Yeah, okay," and walked away. But that one sentence cracked open a door. He started noticing patterns. His boss cut off other people too. His boss dismissed ideas that were good. His boss was impatient with everyone, especially when stressed. And then Daniel learned something else. His boss was dealing with pressure from above, a failing project, and problems at home. In other words, Daniel wasn't the target. Daniel was just the nearest object in the path of a storm. That's how life works more often than you realize. People snap because they're overwhelmed. They criticize because they're insecure. They act cold because they're exhausted. They ghost because they're avoidant. They judge because they're afraid. They bully because they feel small. They withhold praise because they don't know how to give it. And yes, sometimes people are simply selfish or unkind. But even then, their behavior is still about them. Not taking it personally doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior. It doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. It doesn't mean you stay in toxic environments smiling like nothing happened. It means you stop making it mean something about your worth. Because that's the real trap, the meaning you attach. A person raises their voice and you don't just hear volume. You hear, "I'm not safe." A friend cancels plans and you don't just hear schedule conflict. You hear, "I'm not important." A stranger is rude and you don't just experience a moment. You experience, "People don't respect me." Your mind is not just processing events. It's writing identity. That's why it hurts so much. You're not reacting to what happened. You're reacting to what you think it says about you. So the power is not in controlling the world. The power is in controlling the story you tell yourself. Think about a mirror. When a mirror reflects something ugly, you don't blame the mirror. You don't attack it. You don't argue with it. You understand the mirror is showing you what's in front of it. That's all. People are like mirrors too. Sometimes they reflect their own inner world. Sometimes they reflect yours. Sometimes they reflect whatever they're carrying that day. If someone is harsh, that harshness is information. It tells you something about them, about their emotional state, about their maturity, about their wounds, about their habits. It doesn't automatically tell you something about your value. Now, here's where discipline comes in. Because the truth is, taking things personally can become an addiction. It can be a strange kind of ego, a belief that you are the center of every interaction, that every silence is about you, every mood is a message for you, every criticism is a verdict about you. But you're not that important. And I say that with respect because it's one of the most liberating truths you'll ever accept. You are not the center of other people's universe. They are busy living inside their own heads, fighting their own battles, carrying their own narratives, protecting their own insecurities, chasing their own approval, managing their own fears. When you stop making everything about you, you finally get your energy back. This is where your life begins to change. You start showing up with steadiness instead of sensitivity. You stop performing for validation. You stop shrinking to avoid judgment. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You begin to move with quiet power. Now let's get practical. The first habit you need is a pause. Right now, your default response is instant meaning. Something happens and your mind slaps a label on it in less than a second. Disrespect, rejection, failure, embarrassment, threat. You need to interrupt that. When you feel the sting, pause and ask yourself, what else could this mean? That question is a mental weapon. It breaks the spell. It forces your brain to widen the lens. Someone didn't respond. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're drained. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they didn't see it. Maybe they're not a strong communicator. Maybe they're struggling. Maybe they're not as invested as you are. All of those possibilities exist. But your mind picks the one that hurts most. They don't care about me. And you treat that painful guess like a fact. The second habit is separation. Separate the event from your identity. Feedback is not a diagnosis of your worth. A rejection is not a declaration of your unlovability. Someone's bad mood is not proof that you're irritating. A disagreement is not proof that you're wrong as a person. You are not your outcomes. You are not their reactions. You are not your mistakes. You are the one learning. You are the one building. You are the one choosing. The third habit is boundaries without bitterness. When you stop taking things personally, you become clearer about what you'll accept. If someone is rude, you don't collapse, you don't obsess, you don't plot revenge, you don't beg for approval. You simply respond with standards. You might say calmly, I'm open to feedback, but not in that tone. Or you might remove yourself from the situation. Or you might decide this is not a relationship you want to invest in. The key is this: you don't do it to punish them, you do it to protect your peace. There's a huge difference between boundaries powered by self-respect and boundaries powered by emotional injury. One is clean, the other is messy. And self-mastery is clean. Now there's another story I want you to hear. A young woman named Maya started a small business. She poured herself into it. Late nights, early mornings, no weekends. She posted online offering her service, hoping people would notice. One day someone commented publicly, "This is overpriced. I could get better somewhere else." Maya felt her stomach drop. Her hands shook. She stared at the comment like it was a knife. She wanted to delete everything. She wanted to hide. She wanted to respond with anger. She wanted to defend herself with paragraphs. That comment wasn't just a comment. To Maya, it was a threat to her dream. But she paused. She closed her laptop and went for a walk. She breathed. And she asked a different question. Is this about my business, or is this about their need to feel powerful? When she came back, she looked at the commenter's profile. They had a history of leaving negative comments everywhere. It was their pattern, their hobby, their identity. Maya realized something that day. Some people don't want truth. They want control. So she responded simply, "Thank you for your feedback, wishing you the best." And then she moved on. That decision did something bigger than protect her business. It protected her spirit. Because the ability to stay calm in the face of noise is a rare kind of wealth. That's what not taking things personally gives you: internal wealth. It gives you the ability to keep building when people don't understand your vision, to keep growing when someone is uncomfortable with your growth, to keep loving yourself when someone else projects their pain onto you. Now, right here, right now, in the middle of this chapter, I want you to lock in, because this is not entertainment. This is training. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. You don't need everyone to approve of you. You need you to approve of you. But that's not just a statement, it's a practice. It means building a self-image that isn't dependent on applause. It means validating your own effort. It means respecting your own standards. It means knowing who you are even when someone tries to define you with their opinion. And yes, it takes discipline, because your old patterns will fight back. You will still feel the sting sometimes. You will still notice the tone. You will still have that moment where your mind starts spinning a story. But your goal is not to eliminate feeling. Your goal is to stop obeying it. When you feel hurt, don't run, don't perform, don't attack, don't collapse. Observe it. Say, my nervous system is reacting, my ego is reacting, my old conditioning is reacting. And then choose your response like a leader. Leaders don't get dragged by every emotion. Leaders don't surrender their direction to other people's chaos. Leaders don't hand over their confidence because someone had a bad day. This is how you become unshakable. And here's the deepest truth of all. When you stop taking things personally, you stop living defensively. You stop living like you're always on trial. You stop asking, what did they mean by that? And you start asking, who do I choose to be right now? That's power. That's freedom. That's maturity. So as you step away from this chapter, let these questions land in your mind the way a strong bell rings in the air, clear and unavoidable. Where in your life have you been giving people the power to define your worth? What situations do you replay in your head as if they were evidence against you? What would change if you started treating other people's behavior as information instead of a personal attack? And if you stopped taking things personally starting today, what kind of peace would you finally be able to protect? Chapter 2. The story you tell yourself in the last chapter. You faced the invisible weight you've been carrying, and you saw the trap for what it is. The habit of turning every interaction into a verdict about your worth. You learned that most people aren't reacting to you. They're reacting to what they're carrying, and that your real power begins the moment you separate an event from your identity. Now it's time to go deeper, because the moment you stop taking things personally, your mind will try to pull you back in with one weapon, the story. Because what hurts you isn't always what happened. What hurts you is what you decided it meant. A person frowns and your mind writes, they hate me. A friend is quiet and your mind writes, I did something wrong. Someone gives you feedback and your mind writes, I'm not good enough. You don't just experience the moment. You assign it meaning, you attach it to your self-image, and then you live inside that meaning like it's the truth. And the mind is fast. It doesn't ask permission, it narrates. It's like walking into a movie halfway through and trying to guess the plot. You catch one scene, one line of dialogue, one facial expression, and your brain fills in the rest. It creates motives, intentions, and conclusions without evidence. That's not weakness. That's survival programming. But in modern life, it becomes emotional sabotage. So let's talk about the story, the narrative, the internal script that turns neutral events into personal attacks. Here's a simple reality: people are messy translators. They don't always communicate what they mean. They communicate what they feel in the moment. They leak frustration, fear, insecurity, stress, impatience, and ego. And if you're not careful, you'll take their messy translation and treat it like a clear message about you. Imagine someone hands you a letter that's smudged with ink, soaked from rain, ripped at the edges. You can't read all the words, but you assume the worst. You decide it's insulting, rejecting, threatening. That's what you do when you take things personally. You receive a smudged message and you fill the missing words with pain. Now let me tell you about a man named Karim. Karim trained hard. He took pride in discipline, early mornings, consistent effort. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was trying to become someone. He joined a local boxing gym not because he wanted a fight, but because he wanted focus. One evening, after training for weeks, he sparred with an experienced fighter. Karim got hit, a lot. He kept moving, kept his guard up, kept trying. And afterward, he expected at least a nod, a simple good work. Instead, his coach looked at him and said, "You're soft." 2 words. Karim felt heat rise in his face. Soft. That word didn't land as coaching. It landed as disrespect. It landed as an attack on his character. He went home angry. He thought about quitting. He replayed it like a slap. The next day he came back, but he was tense, defensive. He wasn't training freely. He was training like he was being judged. After the session, the coach walked over again and said, "Better today." Karim didn't feel better. He felt manipulated. He said, "Why did you say I was soft yesterday?" The coach didn't soften his face. He didn't apologize. He just said, "Because you are. You flinch before you get hit. You pull back before you commit. And that's not an insult. That's a pattern. Fix it." Then the coach pointed at a fighter across the room and said, "He used to be the same. Now he's dangerous." That moment changed Karim, not because the coach was gentle. He was. It changed him because Karim realized what he had done. He had turned instruction into humiliation. He had turned training into a trial. He had taken a sharp message and turned it into a personal identity. He had heard, "You're soft," and translated it as, "You are less than." But the coach meant, "This is the current version of you, upgrade it." That's the difference between growth and suffering. 2 people can hear the same words. One collapses, one evolves. The difference isn't their talent. The difference is the story they tell themselves. Now, I want you to understand something that will save you years of emotional exhaustion. Your first interpretation is usually the one that protects your ego, not your peace. Ego doesn't just show up as arrogance. Ego shows up as fragility. Ego shows up as the desperate need to be seen as good, competent, liked, respected, and safe. Ego wants certainty. It wants control. It wants to know where it stands. So when something feels unclear, ego fills in the blanks with fear. That's why you assume the worst when someone's tone is off. That's why you read between lines that aren't even there. That's why you take silence personally. That's why you feel attacked when someone simply disagrees. Your ego would rather believe you're being targeted than admit life is unpredictable. But your peace requires a different approach. Your peace requires you to become a disciplined interpreter. Here's how. The first skill is naming the story. When you feel the sting, don't argue with it. Don't wrestle it. Don't pretend it isn't there. Name it. Say to yourself, "The story I'm telling myself is that I'm being rejected." Or the story I'm telling myself is that I'm not respected. Or the story I'm telling myself is that I failed. The moment you say, "The story I'm telling myself," you create distance. You stop being inside the story. You become the observer of the story, and the observer has power. The second skill is asking for evidence. Not feelings, evidence. Feelings are real, but feelings are not always accurate. Evidence looks like this. What did they actually say? What did they actually do? What do I actually know? What facts do I have, not what assumptions? A coworker didn't invite you to lunch. Evidence, they ate lunch without you. Assumption, they hate you. A friend didn't respond for a day. Evidence, no response. Assumption, you don't matter. A family member made a comment. Evidence, words were spoken. Assumption, they think you're a failure. Your mind turns absence of information into certainty of rejection. That's not intuition. That's insecurity wearing a costume. The third skill is choosing the most useful interpretation. Not the most flattering, not the most painful, the most useful. Sometimes the useful interpretation is they're stressed. Sometimes it's they don't have the emotional skill to communicate properly. Sometimes it's this isn't my person. Sometimes it's I can improve here. Sometimes it's this is not worth my energy. The goal is not to be naive. The goal is to be free. Because if you take everything personally, you become easy to control. Anyone can push your buttons because you installed the buttons and handed them the map. But when you stop taking things personally, you stop being reactive. You stop being programmable. You become solid. Now let's get even more real. There's a place where people take things personally more than anywhere else. Messages, texts, emails, DMs, the modern battlefield of interpretation. A period at the end of a sentence becomes a threat. A short reply becomes anger. A K becomes disrespect. A delayed response becomes rejection. A scene without a reply becomes humiliation. And the truth is, you're often not reacting to the message. You're reacting to your own fear of being unwanted. You're reacting to the uncertainty. But disciplined people do not build their emotional life on punctuation. So here's a standard you're going to adopt. You will not assume hostility from ambiguity. Read that again in your mind. Feel how strong it is. You will not assume hostility from ambiguity. If you don't know, you don't know. If you need clarity, you ask for it calmly. You don't punish people in your head for crimes you invented. And while we're here, let's talk about criticism. Because if you want freedom, you must train your relationship with criticism. Most people fear criticism because they confuse it with rejection. But criticism is not rejection. Criticism is information. Sometimes it's helpful information. Sometimes it's distorted information. Sometimes it reveals something you need to change. Sometimes it reveals who you should not trust. Either way, it's data. The moment you treat criticism as identity, you become fragile. The moment you treat criticism as data, you become powerful. Here's a real-world example. A woman named Alina posted a presentation she was proud of to her team. She expected support. Instead, someone replied, "This feels unpolished." Alina's chest tightened. Her mind shouted, "They think I'm incompetent." She started crafting a defensive response. She wanted to explain every reason, every deadline, every constraint, but she paused. She asked herself, what is the data here? The data was simple. Someone experienced her work as incomplete. That didn't mean she was incomplete. That didn't mean she was unworthy. That didn't mean she was doomed. It meant there was room to refine. So she replied, "Appreciate that. Which parts feel unpolished to you?" That question alone put her back in control. The other person gave specifics. Alina adjusted a few slides, tightened the structure, improved the flow, and the final version landed strong. She didn't win because she was perfect. She won because she didn't make feedback personal. That's what mature confidence looks like. Not loud confidence, not performative confidence. Calm confidence. Calm confidence says, I can learn, I can adjust, I can improve. Ego says, I must be seen as flawless. Now a key part of this chapter is understanding that some people will throw opinions at you like rocks, and those rocks are often carved from their own pain. Here's how you stay safe without becoming bitter. You stop letting people rent space in your mind. You stop replaying their words like they own you. You stop giving them a second conversation after they already left the room. If someone makes a comment, you can do something radical. You can let it pass. You can say, interesting. You can say, noted. You can say nothing at all, not because you're weak, because you're disciplined, because you don't need to prove yourself to someone who isn't building your life. And if someone's behavior crosses a line, you don't need rage to respond. You need standards. You can say, that doesn't work for me. You can say, we can talk when it's respectful. You can leave. And you leave without dragging their opinion behind you like a chain. Now, there's one more thing you need to understand if you want this to stick. Not taking things personally is not a one-time decision. It's a repeated practice. Your mind will keep trying to personalize. That's its habit. That's its comfort zone. So you train, you correct, you return to the truth. Most of what people do is about them. And most of what you suffer is the story you told yourself in the dark. So tonight or tomorrow or the next time your heart tightens because someone's words hit you wrong, I want you to do this. Pause. Name the story. Ask for evidence. Choose the most useful interpretation. And then act from your standards, not from your wound, because the goal is not to be unbothered like a statue. The goal is to be steady like a mountain. The mountain doesn't chase the weather. It doesn't panic at thunder. It doesn't collapse because the wind is loud. It stands. You can stand too. And before we close this chapter, let's make sure you're not just listening. Let's make sure you're becoming. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. So ask yourself now, with ruthless honesty, what stories have you been telling yourself that have been quietly draining your confidence? Whose tone, silence, or opinion have you been treating like a courtroom verdict? Where have you been demanding certainty from people who can barely understand themselves? And what would happen to your life, your focus, and your peace if you decided today that you will no longer live inside assumptions, but inside truth? Chapter 3. The trigger is not the truth in the last chapter. You learned that what hurts you isn't always what happened. It's the story you decided it meant. You practice stepping back from your first interpretation, demanding evidence instead of fear, and choosing the most useful meaning rather than the most painful one. Now we're going to take it deeper, because even when you know the story is false, your body can still react like it's real. That reaction is called a trigger, and today you're going to learn how to stop letting triggers run your life. A trigger is not truth. A trigger is a signal. It's an old alarm system going off inside you. And that alarm can be loud, urgent, convincing. It can feel like danger even when there's no danger. It can feel like rejection even when there's no rejection. It can feel like humiliation even when there's only feedback. The most dangerous part is this. When you're triggered, you think you're seeing reality clearly. But you're not. You're seeing the past painted over the present. You're not responding to the current moment alone. You're responding to every moment that came before it that looked similar. That's why the same words can bounce off one person and destroy another. That's why one person shrugs at criticism while another spirals for days. That's why one person hears, "We need to talk," and stays calm, while another person's stomach drops like they're falling off a cliff. It's not the words, it's the meaning your nervous system has attached to them. Let me tell you about Nina. Nina was ambitious. She had goals. She was reliable, the kind of person who showed up early, stayed late, made things happen. She was the one people leaned on. But Nina had one weakness that drained her. She could not handle being misunderstood. If someone questioned her intentions, she felt personally attacked. If someone misread her tone, she felt disrespected. If someone hinted she was selfish, she felt like her entire identity was being threatened. One day, a friend said to her, "You've changed. You feel different lately." That should have been a conversation, but for Nina, it was a knife. She instantly heard, "You're not good anymore." She heard, "You're disappointing." She heard, "You're failing." Her heart started racing. Her voice got sharp. She said things she didn't mean. She defended herself like she was on trial. The conversation turned into a fight. Later that night, she sat alone in silence and wondered why she reacted that way. She knew her friend wasn't trying to destroy her, so why did it feel like an attack? Because she was triggered. That comment touched an old wound, the fear of being seen as not enough. For Nina, being misunderstood wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. Her nervous system treated it as a threat. It didn't matter that she was an adult with control over her life. Her body reacted like she was a child about to be rejected. This is the part most people don't want to face. You can't think your way out of triggers if you don't train your body too, because triggers live in the body first. They show up as tightness, heat, nausea, pressure, shaking, tension, shallow breathing. And if you don't recognize them, you will mistake the sensation for proof. You will say, "I feel it, so it must be true." But your feelings are not a lie detector. They are an alarm system, and alarm systems can misfire. So here's the discipline. You must learn to recognize the trigger in real time and hold your response long enough for your intelligence to return. That's the difference between the version of you that reacts and the version of you that leads. Leaders don't just lead companies. They lead their own nervous system. Now let's break down what happens when you get triggered. Step 1, your brain detects a threat. It could be a facial expression, a tone, a delayed reply, a critique, a look, a silence, a sudden change in energy. Step 2, your body floods with stress. Your heart rate rises, your muscles tense, your breathing changes, your mind narrows. Step 3, your brain tries to survive. And survival mode doesn't care about truth. It cares about protection. It will create a story that gives you something to do. Attack, defend, withdraw, explain, please, control. That's why you send the long paragraph. That's why you lash out. That's why you go cold. That's why you obsess. That's why you replay the conversation in your head like you're preparing for a courtroom battle. That's survival mode. But you're not in danger. You're in discomfort. And discomfort is not an emergency. So the skill is to slow down the moment between trigger and response. That moment is where your life changes. Because when you control that moment, you stop taking things personally at the deepest level. You stop letting your past control your present. Here's a metaphor that will stick. Imagine your mind is a powerful horse. When the horse is calm, it's strong, focused, obedient. But when the horse is spooked, it bolts. It runs wild. It drags you wherever it wants. Most people try to tame the horse while it's already sprinting. They try to reason with themselves mid-panic. Sometimes it works. Most of the time it doesn't. The better move is to train the horse daily so it doesn't bolt so easily. That training is nervous system discipline. And it starts with a tool you can use immediately, the 3-breath reset. When you feel triggered, you take 3 slow breaths, not dramatic, not forced, just slow enough to signal to your body that you're safe. Inhale through the nose. Exhale through the mouth. Do that 3 times and something changes. Your body stops escalating. Your brain gets a little oxygen. Your emotions soften just enough for you to choose. This is not spiritual fluff. This is control, because without control you will keep reacting to life like it's a threat. Now another tool, label the trigger, not the situation, the trigger. Say, this is a trigger. Say, my nervous system is activated. Say, this feels like rejection, but it might not be rejection. Labeling isn't weakness, it's clarity. It pulls you out of the storm and puts you in the sky above it. Now let's talk about one of the biggest triggers on earth, disrespect. You hear a tone, you feel dismissed. Someone cuts you off. Someone criticizes you in front of others. Someone talks down to you. The body reacts fast. And here's what most people do, they personalize it. They make it mean they are powerless. They make it mean they are small. They make it mean they must fight to regain control. But what if the disrespect is simply a reflection of someone else's lack of control? What if it's emotional immaturity? What if it's stress and bad regulation? What if it's their habit? And yes, what if it's intentional? Even then, it still doesn't have to become your identity, because you can handle disrespect without absorbing it. You can acknowledge it without wearing it. You can respond without spiraling. This is how. First, you do not match energy. When someone is rude, your impulse is to become rude back. You think that's strength. It's not strength, it's surrender. Matching energy means they control you. Discipline means you control you. Second, you speak with calm boundaries. You don't explain your worth. You state your standard. You say, I'm open to discussing this respectfully. Or, we can continue when the tone is calm. Or, that doesn't work for me. You don't beg, you don't perform, you don't explode, you stand. Third, you decide what happens next. Sometimes the next move is a conversation. Sometimes it's distance. Sometimes it's removal. But you decide based on your values, not your wounds. Because when you're wounded, you want revenge or validation. When you're disciplined, you want peace and progress. Now let's take it into the deepest trigger of all, abandonment. Not everyone has this wound, but many do. Abandonment triggers show up when someone pulls away, goes quiet, takes long to respond, cancels plans, seems less engaged. And if you're not trained, you will personalize it instantly. You will cling, you will chase, you will over-explain, you will over-give, you will test them. You will become needy, or you will pretend you don't care while silently falling apart. But here's what freedom looks like. Freedom looks like knowing you will be okay even if someone leaves. Not because you don't value people. Because you value yourself enough not to collapse without them. This kind of security isn't built through wishful thinking. It's built through repeated proof. Proof that you can soothe yourself. Proof that you can stand alone. Proof that you can survive discomfort without trying to control someone else. So the practice is this. When someone pulls away and you feel the panic rise, you do not move immediately. You pause, you breathe, you label the trigger, and you ask yourself, am I responding to now or to then? That question is everything. Because it forces you to separate the person in front of you from the people in your past. It forces you to separate the moment from the memory. And once you see the difference, you can act with clarity. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe they're avoidant. Maybe they're not aligned with you. All possible. But the point is you do not abandon yourself trying to prevent abandonment. That's the trap. When you take things personally, you abandon yourself. You betray your peace. You betray your boundaries. You betray your dignity, all to keep someone from leaving or judging or misunderstanding. But when you stop taking things personally, you return to yourself. You become your own home. Now there's a final tool for this chapter, and it's a hard one. It's called the delayed response rule. When you're triggered, you do not respond immediately. You wait. You wait 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, a night, not to manipulate, to regain control. Because the words you say while triggered are usually the words you regret. Triggered words are not honest, they are defensive. Triggered actions are not wise, they are protective. So you wait until your body settles, then you choose. And if you train this consistently, something powerful happens. Your triggers stop controlling you, not because they disappear, but because you stop obeying them. That's mastery. That's the level you're training toward. You are becoming someone who can feel pressure without breaking, feel discomfort without collapsing, feel criticism without crumbling, feel silence without spiraling. This is how you become unshakable, not by never being triggered, but by knowing exactly what to do when you are. And now, as you let this chapter sink in, let these questions sit with you like weights you're strong enough to lift. What situations trigger you most often, and what old wound do they touch? What sensations show up in your body when you start taking things personally? What would change if you treated those sensations as signals instead of proof? And what kind of person would you become if you mastered the space between the trigger and your response? If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Chapter 4. Let them have their opinion. Up to now, you've uncovered the real source of most emotional pain. Not the event itself, but the meaning you attach to it, the story you tell yourself, and the triggers in your body that make the story feel like truth. You've learned to pause, breathe, label the reaction, and choose a response from standards instead of wounds. Now we take the next step, because even when you manage your triggers, there's still one thing that can pull you back into the old prison: other people's opinions. People will have opinions about you for the rest of your life. No matter what you do, someone will misunderstand you. Someone will judge you. Someone will reduce you to a single moment. Someone will decide they know your motives. Someone will project their fears onto your choices. Someone will be uncomfortable with your growth, and they'll call it arrogance. Someone will feel threatened by your boundaries, and they'll call it selfishness. And the most dangerous part is not that they have the opinion. The most dangerous part is your addiction to correcting it. Somewhere along the way, many people start living as if their job is to be accurately perceived by everyone. They think peace comes from being understood, so they explain, they defend, they justify, they over-communicate, they twist themselves into shapes that make other people comfortable. They deliver speeches no one requested. They argue for their own character like it's a court case. And they call it maturity, but it's not maturity. It's approval-seeking disguised as communication. Real maturity is knowing when to speak and when to let people be wrong about you. Because here's the truth: you can be the sweetest fruit on earth and there will still be people who hate fruit. You cannot win everyone, and you don't need to. Not taking things personally is not just emotional control. It's identity control. It's knowing who you are so deeply that an outside opinion cannot knock you off your foundation. So let's make this practical, because this chapter is about a skill you will use every day. It's the skill of letting people have their opinion without letting it have you. Let me tell you about someone named Jordan. Jordan grew up being the good one, the responsible one, the polite one, the one who didn't make trouble. Jordan learned early that approval equals safety. When adults praised Jordan, it felt like love. When they were disappointed, it felt like danger. So Jordan became excellent at reading the room, too excellent. By adulthood, Jordan could sense disappointment from a single pause in conversation. Jordan could feel judgment from a raised eyebrow. Jordan could hear criticism in a neutral sentence. Jordan didn't just have social awareness. Jordan had social hypervigilance, and it was exhausting. Then Jordan decided to change careers. Nothing dramatic. Just a shift toward work that felt more aligned. Jordan started taking classes, studying at night, slowly building a new path. At first, it felt exciting. But then the comments started. An old friend said, "That doesn't sound realistic." A family member said, "Why would you throw away something stable?" A coworker joked, "Let me know when that little dream pays rent." Jordan smiled in the moment, but inside, Jordan felt attacked. Not because the comments were brutally harsh, but because they carried an unspoken message. Stay where you are, don't change, don't surprise us. Jordan went home and spiraled. Jordan started doubting. Jordan started explaining to people who didn't ask. Jordan started seeking reassurance like oxygen. And that's when Jordan heard a sentence that snapped the spell. A mentor said, "Stop trying to be understood by people who benefit from you staying the same." That hit like a hammer. Because when you change, the people around you must adjust their expectations. Some will celebrate that, others will resist it, not because you're wrong, but because your growth forces them to confront their own comfort zone. So Jordan practiced something new. Jordan stopped arguing. When someone said, "That's unrealistic," Jordan responded, "Maybe, I'm still doing it." When someone said, "Why would you do that?" Jordan said, "It matters to me." When someone joked about the dream, Jordan smiled and moved on. No speeches, no begging, no fight, just quiet commitment. And over time, the noise lost power, because opinions only control you when you treat them like instructions. Now understand this clearly. There are two kinds of opinions you will face. The first kind is feedback from people who want your growth. They challenge you because they care. They push you because they see your potential. Their honesty comes with respect. They're willing to explain, clarify, and support. You should listen to those people, not blindly but seriously. The second kind is commentary from people who want your control. They criticize you because your independence scares them. They mock you because your discipline exposes their excuses. They judge you because your boundaries limit their access. They disapprove because your choices don't serve their narrative. You do not negotiate with those people. You do not hand them the steering wheel. You let them talk and you keep walking. Now here's where most people fail. They think letting people have their opinion means becoming numb. It doesn't. It means becoming selective. You don't ignore everything. You ignore noise. And the way you tell the difference is by asking one question. Is this person qualified to speak into my life? Qualified doesn't mean perfect. Qualified means they have character, wisdom, and alignment with what you're building. If someone doesn't live with discipline, their opinion about your discipline is irrelevant. If someone doesn't take responsibility, their opinion about your choices is noise. If someone has a habit of projecting and judging, their opinion is a mirror of their inner world, not a reflection of your truth. When you accept that, you stop taking it personally, because you stop treating every voice as authority. Now let's talk about the specific trap that destroys peace faster than almost anything. The need to correct misunderstandings. You felt this. Someone misreads you. Someone assumes your motive. Someone tells a story about you. Someone repeats something incorrectly. Someone labels you unfairly, and your body wants to fix it immediately. You want to send the message. You want to clarify. You want to set the record straight. You want to prove you're not what they think. But here's the harsh truth. You will never control what everyone believes about you. And chasing that control will ruin your life, because there will always be another person, another opinion, another misunderstanding, another moment taken out of context. If you make your peace dependent on being correctly perceived, you will never be at peace. So you need a higher standard. Your standard is this: live so consistently that the truth doesn't need defending. That doesn't mean rumors won't exist. It means you won't panic about them. Because you know who you are, and the people who matter will see it over time. Now there's a deeper reason this matters. When you try to correct every misunderstanding, you're not just protecting your image. You're feeding the part of you that's afraid of being disliked. And that fear is expensive. It costs you honesty. It costs you boundaries. It costs you courage. It costs you growth. It costs you focus. So the practice of letting people have their opinion is a practice of becoming fearless. Not reckless. Fearless. It's saying, you are allowed to misunderstand me and I will still move forward. That's strength. Now let's go into a real-world example that hits close. Social circles. There comes a moment in life when you begin to change and your old environment starts to react. Maybe you stop partying. Maybe you start training. Maybe you start studying. Maybe you get serious. Maybe you stop tolerating disrespect. Maybe you stop over-explaining. Maybe you stop being available for everything. And people notice. Some will say, you've changed, like it's an insult. Some will say, you think you're better now. Some will say, you're acting different. Here, what they mean, whether they realize it or not. You're no longer predictable. They miss the version of you that was easier to influence. And if you take that personally, you'll shrink back down to make them comfortable. But if you're disciplined, you'll recognize it for what it is, a test. Not a test you need to pass, a test you need to outgrow. So here's what you do. You let them have the opinion. You don't argue, you don't preach, you don't chase, you don't perform, you keep building. Because the truth is, when you rise, some people will clap and some people will cough to cover the sound. That cough is not your problem. Now I want to give you a mindset that will protect you immediately. Think of opinions like weather. Weather changes all the time. One day it's warm, one day it's cold, one day it's calm, one day it's chaotic. If you plan your entire life around weather, you never go anywhere. You check the sky, you panic, you cancel, you hide, you delay. But disciplined people don't negotiate with weather. They prepare, they dress accordingly, and they move. That's how you treat opinions. You don't pretend they don't exist. You just refuse to let them decide your direction. Now let's get even more concrete. Here's a mental phrase you can use the moment someone's opinion tries to hook you. Let them. Let them misunderstand. Let them judge. Let them assume. Let them talk. Let them doubt. Let them. This is not passivity. This is freedom. Because the moment you say let them, you remove the urgency. You stop running to fix their perception. You stop fighting shadows. And then you add the second part, the part that creates real power. Let me. Let me stay calm. Let me keep my standard. Let me keep building. Let me hold my boundaries. Let me grow anyway. That combination changes your life. Let them, let me. It shifts you from reaction to leadership. Now there will be times when you must speak up. If someone is lying in a way that damages your work or safety, you address it clearly. If someone crosses a boundary, you respond. If someone's behavior affects outcomes, you communicate, but you do it cleanly, not emotionally, not defensively, not as a desperate attempt to control their thoughts. You speak to protect truth and standards, not to beg for approval. That's the difference. And as you practice this, something surprising happens. You stop feeling smaller around loud people. You stop shrinking around judgment. You stop living like your reputation is your oxygen, because you realize your reputation is not your identity. Your character is. Your choices are. Your discipline is. Your consistency is. And those are not up for debate. So as we close this chapter, I want you to sit with these questions the way a disciplined person sits with hard training, not avoiding, not flinching, just facing it. Whose opinions have you been treating like law? Where have you been exhausting yourself trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you? What would your life look like if you stopped correcting every perception and started living from your standards instead? And what would you finally build if you stopped chasing approval and chose quiet commitment over loud explanation? If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Chapter 5. The Art of Detachment Without Disconnection. You've already seen how taking things personally traps you in the reactions of others, how your mind invents painful stories, how triggers hijack your body, and how opinions become chains when you keep trying to correct them. You've practiced pausing, breathing, labeling the storm, and letting people have their thoughts without letting those thoughts control your life. Now it's time for the next level, because there's a fear hiding underneath all this work. The fear that if you stop taking things personally, you'll become cold, distant, or disconnected. That fear keeps people stuck. They believe that emotional strength means emotional shutdown. They think detachment means not caring. They imagine becoming numb, robotic, unreachable. And because they don't want to lose their humanity, they keep absorbing everyone else's moods, comments, and chaos like it's their responsibility. But real detachment is not disconnection. Real detachment is connection with boundaries. It's caring without carrying. It's loving without losing yourself. It's being present without being possessed by the moment. This chapter is where you learn the art of staying open while staying free, because the goal is not to become harder. The goal is to become clearer. Think of a window. A window lets light in, but it doesn't let the storm inside destroy the room. It doesn't invite the wind to rearrange the furniture. It doesn't allow the rain to flood the floor. The window is open to light but closed to chaos. That's detachment. You can be warm without being weak. You can be kind without being controlled. You can listen without becoming responsible for everything you hear. Now let me tell you about someone named Marcus. Marcus was the person everyone called when life got heavy. Friends, family, coworkers, strangers. If someone needed help, Marcus showed up. If someone needed money, he gave it. If someone needed emotional support, he stayed on the phone for hours. Marcus believed that being a good person meant absorbing other people's pain. He thought compassion meant carrying, so he carried everything. He carried his sister's anxiety. He carried his friend's breakup. He carried his coworker's stress. He carried his mother's fear. He carried problems that weren't his, and he did it with pride as if being crushed was proof of love. But then his body started speaking. He got headaches. He got exhausted. He became irritated. His sleep was shallow. He felt resentment rising in him, and he hated himself for it. He kept thinking, "What's wrong with me? I'm supposed to be supportive." Nothing was wrong with him. He was overloaded. One evening, a friend called again, complaining about the same situation for the 5th time. Marcus listened, offered advice, tried to help. The friend ignored it, as usual, and ended the call with, "Thanks, I needed that." Marcus stared at his phone after the call ended and realized something that made him feel sick. His friend felt lighter and he felt heavier. That's when Marcus made a decision. He was done being the emotional landfill for other people's lives, not because he didn't care, because he finally cared about himself too. That's the lesson. People think detachment is selfish. It's not. Detachment is self-respect. And if you want to stop taking things personally, you must master detachment. Because without detachment, you will confuse empathy with responsibility. You will take on what isn't yours. You will personalize what isn't personal. You will keep bleeding energy into situations you cannot control. So how do you detach without disconnecting? You start by understanding the difference between being supportive and being available for abuse, manipulation, or endless emotional dumping. Support has a purpose. It has movement. It has respect. Dumping is repetitive. It has no accountability. It has no change. Support sounds like, "I'm struggling, can you help me think through this?" Dumping sounds like, "I'm struggling every day forever with no intention to change." Support includes listening but also action. Dumping uses you as a temporary painkiller. And when you don't detach, you become someone's coping mechanism. That's not love. That's a leash. Detachment is how you cut the leash without cutting your heart. Now here's the mindset shift that changes everything. You can care about someone without merging with them. Merging is when someone's mood becomes your mood. Someone's crisis becomes your crisis. Someone's opinion becomes your self-image. Merging is emotional entanglement, and it's the fastest way to lose your peace. Detachment is saying, "I see you, I care, but I will not drown with you." It's the lifeguard principle. A lifeguard doesn't jump into the water and let the panicking person drag them under. A lifeguard stays calm, stays grounded, and saves the person without becoming a victim of the panic. That's you now. You are not here to drown. You are here to lead. Let's make it practical with language you can actually use. When someone comes to you with chaos, you don't immediately absorb it. You pause, breathe, and ask yourself, "Is this mine?" That question is a filter. Is this mine to solve? Is this mine to carry? Is this mine to personalize? Most of the time, the answer is no, so you respond from a calm place. You might say, "I hear you." You might say, "That sounds tough." You might say, "What do you want to do about it?" That last question is powerful because it puts responsibility back where it belongs. And if someone keeps dumping, you can set a boundary without being harsh. You can say, "I care about you, but I can't keep having the same conversation if nothing changes." You can say, "I'm here for you, but I also need you to take action." You can say, "I can talk for a few minutes, then I need to get back to my day." Detachment doesn't require cruelty. It requires clarity. Now let's bring it into relationships because this is where people struggle the most. In close relationships, the temptation to take things personally is strongest. A partner is quiet, and your mind begins its old routine. A friend is distant, and your nervous system starts whispering abandonment. A family member says something sharp, and your body braces for war. Detachment is what saves you here. Detachment is understanding that you can be close to someone without treating their emotions as your responsibility. Your partner can have a bad day without you making it mean they don't love you. Your friend can be overwhelmed without you making it mean you're unwanted. Your family member can have their own dysfunction without you making it mean you're not enough. You respond, but you don't internalize. You stay present, but you don't self-destruct. That's the art. Now I want to tell you a story that will lock this in. A woman named Priya was in a relationship with someone who struggled to communicate. When he felt stress, he shut down. He became distant. He answered with one-word replies. He disappeared into his phone. Priya took it personally every time. She thought, he's pulling away because I did something wrong. She thought, I'm not enough for him. She thought, I need to fix this now. So she chased. She questioned. She tried to pull him back with words. She demanded reassurance. She argued. She cried. And the more she chased, the more he shut down. It became a loop. One day, after another tense evening, Priya did something different. She detached. Not by leaving the relationship, but by leaving the emotional trap. When he went quiet, she didn't panic. She didn't interrogate. She didn't take it as a verdict. She said calmly, I can see you're stressed. I'm here when you're ready to talk. And then she returned to herself. She made tea, she read, she journaled, she went for a walk. She did not sit in the waiting room of his mood. At first, it felt unnatural, like she was neglecting something, like she was being careless, but she was. She was choosing stability, and something happened. The relationship became calmer. Because her nervous system stopped fighting his nervous system, her steadiness created space, and his stress had less power over the room. This is what detachment does. It stops emotional storms from becoming emotional wars. Now, detachment also protects you from the trap of over-pleasing. When you take things personally, you become obsessed with preventing discomfort in others. You apologize too much. You explain too much. You sacrifice too much. You try to manage everyone's feelings. But those feelings are not yours to manage. Your job is not to be liked. Your job is to be aligned. Aligned with your values. Aligned with your standards. Aligned with the person you're becoming. Detachment is choosing alignment over approval. Now, another critical part of detachment is accepting that you can't control outcomes. You can't control whether someone understands you. You can't control whether someone appreciates you. You can't control whether someone chooses you. You can't control whether someone changes. You can influence. You can communicate. You can show up, but you can't control. When you try to control, you suffer. Detachment is releasing control while staying committed to your own effort. It's saying, I will do my part with integrity and I will release the rest. That is peace. Now here's the paradox. When you detach properly, you actually become more attractive, more respected, more powerful, because you stop chasing. You stop begging. You stop needing. You become someone who is steady, centered, and self-led. And that energy changes everything. People feel it. They sense that you're not easily shaken. They sense that you won't be dragged into drama. They sense that you're not available for emotional games. That doesn't make you cold. It makes you safe. Safe to be around. Safe to trust. Safe to respect. Because the person who can stay calm is the person who can lead. So let's bring this chapter home with a daily practice. Every time you feel yourself taking something personally, say this inside your mind. This is theirs. I will not make it mine. Not as denial, as discipline. Then ask yourself, what is my next best move? Not your most emotional move, your best move. Sometimes the best move is to communicate. Sometimes it's to step back. Sometimes it's to set a boundary. Sometimes it's to let silence do the work. Sometimes it's to walk away. But it's always chosen, not forced. And when you start living like this, you stop being pulled around by other people's weather. You become the window, light in, chaos out. You become the lifeguard, calm in, panic out. You become steady. And that steadiness becomes your new identity. So let these questions settle into you now, not as nice thoughts, but as training commands for the next chapter of your life. Where have you been merging with other people's emotions and calling it love? Who have you been trying to rescue in a way that's quietly drowning you? What boundaries do you need to set so you can care without carrying? And what would your relationships feel like if you stayed deeply connected, but no longer emotionally entangled? If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Chapter 6. Unbreakable Peace. You've walked through the real mechanics of emotional freedom. You've learned to drop the invisible weight, separate events from identity, challenge the story your mind invents, master triggers instead of obeying them, let people have their opinions, and detach without disconnecting. You've trained the ability to stay steady in pressure, calm in confusion, and clear in conflict. Now in this final chapter, you lock it in for life because not taking things personally isn't a trick you use once. It's a new standard you live by. Peace isn't something you find. Peace is something you build. And the truth is, most people never build it. They wait for it. They wait for people to treat them better. They wait for life to be easier. They wait for the perfect apology, the perfect relationship, the perfect moment where nothing triggers them. That moment is not coming. The world will keep being the world. People will keep being human. Some will be kind, some will be careless, some will be mature, some will be messy, some will be healed, some will be bleeding. So if your peace depends on everyone behaving well, you will never have peace. But if your peace depends on your discipline, your identity, and your standards, then you become dangerous in the best way, because you become unshakable. Let me tell you a story that ties everything together. There was a man named Elias who ran a small team. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but people listened to him because he was steady. He didn't panic. He didn't lash out. He didn't take every disagreement as disrespect. He was calm under pressure, and that calm was contagious. One day, a new person joined the team. Smart, talented, and insecure. In the first few weeks, the new person challenged Elias constantly, not with good questions, but with subtle disrespect. Interruptions. Eye rolls. Little comments said just loud enough to be heard. People expected Elias to snap. They expected him to defend himself. Elias didn't. He stayed calm. He stayed clear. He addressed the work, not the attitude. He corrected the process, not the person. When he needed to, he spoke with standards. Simple, direct, clean. And after one meeting, someone asked him privately, "How are you not taking that personally?" Elias said, "Because I'm not fighting for my worth. I'm building the mission." That sentence is the final lesson. When you know what you're here to build, you stop fighting over how you're perceived. You stop making every moment about your ego. You stop getting dragged into emotional side quests. You move with purpose. Purpose is a shield, not because it blocks pain, but because it blocks distraction. Now, here's the reality most people avoid. Taking things personally is often a sign that your identity is too fragile. It means you don't fully trust who you are yet. So you look to others for confirmation. You look to their tone, their praise, their silence, their opinions. You look for proof that you're okay. That's why it hurts. You're outsourcing your self-worth. But the mature version of you stops outsourcing. The mature version of you becomes the source, not in an arrogant way, in a grounded way. You don't need to be worshipped. You need to be aligned. You don't need to be praised constantly. You need to be consistent. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need to understand you. This is where unbreakable peace begins. It begins when your self-image is built on your choices, not on someone else's mood. So let's set the foundation. Unbreakable peace comes from three pillars. The first pillar is self-definition. You decide who you are, not your past, not your mistakes, not your critics, not your ex, not your family's expectation, not your friends' opinions. You decide, you define your standards, you define your values. You define what you tolerate and what you walk away from. You define what matters and what doesn't. When you do that, other people's opinions become less powerful because they're commenting on a life they're not responsible for. The second pillar is emotional ownership. You take responsibility for what happens inside you, not blame. Responsibility. You stop saying, "They made me feel this." No, they triggered something and you felt it. That gives you power. Because if someone can make you feel something, they can control you. But if you own your inner world, you cannot be controlled that easily. You can be challenged, you can be tested, you can be irritated, but you remain the leader of your responses. The third pillar is intentional focus. You put your attention on what you can control. Your actions, your habits, your discipline, your boundaries, your direction, your effort, not their assumptions, not their drama, not their mood swings, not their approval. Because what you focus on grows. If you focus on disrespect, you grow resentment. If you focus on validation, you grow neediness. If you focus on building, you grow strength. Now here's how you make this real in daily life. You begin treating your peace like a non-negotiable asset, not something you gamble with, not something you trade for temporary comfort, not something you hand away to anyone with a loud opinion. Think about a high-end house with a strong security system. It doesn't let anyone walk in just because they knock. It doesn't collapse because someone yells at the door. It doesn't panic because someone is upset outside. It's secure. Your peace needs to become secure. That means you stop reacting immediately. That means you stop replying from emotion. That means you stop chasing explanations. That means you stop arguing with people who aren't listening. That means you stop giving your attention to things that don't deserve it. You become selective. This is not being cold. This is being disciplined. Now there is a difference between peace and avoidance. Some people hear this message and think it means never having hard conversations. That's not peace. That's fear. Unbreakable peace is not running away. It's standing firmly while staying calm. It's being able to say what needs to be said without needing to win. It's being able to hear criticism without collapsing. It's being able to disagree without disrespect. Being able to walk away without bitterness. So here's a rule you live by now. You do not attend every argument you're invited to. You do not enter every emotional storm. You do not chase every misunderstanding. You do not react to every comment. You choose, and your choices reveal your maturity. Now let's talk about the final enemy. Rumination, replaying conversations, rehearsing comebacks, reliving disrespect, revisiting pain, refreshing your mind with the same poison over and over. Rumination is taking things personally after the moment has already ended. It's paying rent to a problem that no longer has authority. So you must develop a new habit. Closure by choice. Closure doesn't always come from someone else. Most people wait for the apology, the explanation, the validation. They wait for the other person to give them peace. That's why they stay stuck. You are not waiting anymore. When something happens and you've addressed it as best you can, you close it mentally. You say, "This is complete," and you return your focus to your life. This is a skill. At first, your mind will resist. It will want to replay the scene again as if replaying it will change the outcome, but it won't. Replaying the past only steals the present, so you train yourself to interrupt rumination the same way you interrupt a trigger. You notice it, you label it, you redirect. You can say, "I'm not doing this." You can say, "That's the old loop." You can say, "Back to the mission." This is how you take your mind back. Now I want you to picture the person you're becoming. This person walks into rooms without needing approval. This person can hear a tone without collapsing. This person can be criticized without self-hate. This person can be misunderstood without begging. This person can be rejected without losing dignity. This person can be tested without becoming bitter. This person can love deeply without losing themselves. That person is not a fantasy. That person is you trained. You don't need a different life. You need a different inner posture, and this is the posture. You stop taking things personally, not because you don't care, but because you care too much about your future to let other people's chaos control it. You care too much about your mission. You care too much about your peace. You care too much about your growth. You care too much about your standards. So you stop giving emotional power to unqualified voices. You stop making their behavior about your worth. You stop writing painful stories from incomplete information. You stop letting your triggers decide your next move. You stop merging with moods that aren't yours. And you start living like someone who belongs to themselves. This is the true end of personalization, not apathy, ownership. Now here's what I want you to do after this audiobook ends. Choose one moment each day to practice this. One moment. When someone's tone is off, pause and breathe. When someone criticizes you, treat it as data. When someone misunderstands you, let them. When you feel the trigger rise, label it. When the story starts, demand evidence. When you feel pulled into chaos, detach and return to yourself. One moment every day. That's how you build unbreakable peace. Not with huge speeches, with small decisions repeated. And eventually you'll notice something almost shocking. The world will still be noisy, but you won't be. People will still be messy, but you won't be dragged. Opinions will still exist, but they won't own you, because you'll know what you know, you'll know who you are, and you'll live from that place. So this is your final call to action. Stop renting your peace to random moments. Stop handing your confidence to people who haven't earned it. Stop giving your mind away to stories that weaken you. You are done with that version of life. From now on, you live by a new rule. You will not take things personally. You will take them clearly. You will take them wisely. You will take what is useful and leave what is noise. And you will keep moving. Because the strongest person in the room is not the loudest. It's the one who can stay calm and keep building. Now let the final questions land, not as gentle thoughts, but as a challenge that defines your next chapter. What have you been taking personally that was never truly about you? Where have you been fighting for approval instead of building your life? What patterns are you ready to break starting today? Who would you become if your peace was no longer negotiable? And what would your future look like if you walked forward from this moment with steady breath, clear standards, and unbreakable focus? If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue.